Hey guys, doing another update here on my Nano Reef tank build in my Fluval Fluval Flex 15-gallon tank. This video is a two-part video. So this is part one of a two-part video, and it's going to be focused on breaking the cycle. So we're going to see the ugly phase here. You're seeing it here in the video. This was actually at 4 weeks, so 28 days after setting up the tank. I probably should have taken action at 3 weeks, but work was a little bit hectic, so it got pushed to 4 weeks. But as you can see here, there's a little bit of everything. There's brown algae, green algae. I got some hair algae in there you can see blowing around. There's red cyano on the sand bed. There was a little bit of pretty much everything. You can see it kind of wisping around on those inlets there from the filtration. But this is going to talk us through breaking this cycle. And again, it's a two-part. So this first part here, and I'm going to post a second video after to show the other part. This part's going to be focused mostly on the cleanup crew portion to get rid of all this algae outbreak, get past the ugly phase, and break the cycle of the tank and get me to a established tank that I can start putting coral into and move forward with. I also want to note that at this time I did drop feeding back to normal. So the fish are receiving just as much food as they need to eat and maintain healthy. And I also stopped feeding the phytoplankton. So I will resume the phytoplankton later at a different time. And as far as the fish, again, as long as they're getting enough to eat, I am dropping back to just that. Once I get more coral in here, we will jump back to feeding that phytoplankton. All right, so let's talk about some of the details here on what we did to break the ugly phase. So as I mentioned, this is a two-stage process to breaking the ugly phase and breaking that cycle in the tank. The first step is cleanup crew addition, which this video is going to be focused on. And the second step is adjustment to my filtration, which is what part two will be focused on. So looking at the cleanup crew, on the snail side, I added a few things. I added these Astraea turbo snails. So I added about 20. Again, normally I run a tank with 1 per 2 gallons of water. So in this tank it'd be 7 or 8. If I'm having a bad outbreak, I would increase that to maybe 10 or 12. But given I let this cycle go too long due to other commitments in life, I really needed to take a swift action and a more stringent action. So I did put about 20 of these guys in, and they are working on cleaning up all that algae, eating all that algae, and getting the tank back in line. And so the second snail I added was the Nassarius Snails. These guys help turn the sand bed. As you saw, there was a lot of algae in my sand bed. That cyano I did remove by hand every day over a week's period, just to pick it up. But these guys do a great job. You can see the Nassarius Snails are the ones that have that long nose tentacle coming off the front of them there. They do bury themselves in the sand and come out of that to eat. So you can see it's kind of burying itself there in the sand, which helps keep your sand bed aerated and helps keep your sand bed turned. So that reduces the amount of algae that can grow on top of if it's constantly turning. Now, normally in a tank this size, 3, 4 would be what I would do. I put in closer to 10 in this tank just because of where it was at, and I really needed that sand bed to be turned. Again, I did move the cyano off the top myself manually, but for the rest of it, I let them do the work. Also, since that algae was so aggressive, I did add in some Mexican turbo snails. The Mexican turbo actually wasn't available, so I added this top crown, which is pretty similar to a Mexican turbo. If you've seen my video on a reef tank cleanup crew, you would know that these are on my caution list. So these guys will only be in the tank long enough to actually clean it up. Once it is cleaned up, they will be removed and put into my son's fish only tank. But with the big outbreak I had and how much these guys eat, I put 2 of these guys in a small 15-gallon tank just to start eating and getting things back in line to make sure I could quickly correct this problem without it continuing to grow. All right, so I also added some hermit crabs, some blue leg and red leg hermit crabs. These are the guys here that went in the tank. Again, normally with hermit crabs, I recommend 1 per 2 gallons of water. So this tank would be 7 to 8 hermit crabs. If I was having a mild outbreak of algae, I might increase that to 10 to 12, similar like I would with the Astraea turbo snails. However, with this, since I did let it go a little bit long, I put in about 20. And that is a mix of blue leg and red leg hermit crabs. So I put a good mix of them in there at about 20 to let them just start munching away. These guys are great at cleaning up algae, eating detritus, and really do a good job at picking at the rock to make sure that it stays clean so algae doesn't have a new foothold to grow from. At the 5-day mark after all this action that I took, this is what the tank looks like. So 5 days after adding the cleanup crew and adjusting the filter media, which you will see in a separate video, this is what I'm left with. If you look at the rock there, it's pretty much picked clean. If you look at the sand bed, most of what's left is just kind of that cyano. Again, I am doing daily hand removal of that cyano, but you can see the sand there has been turned a lot. So those Nassarius snails are doing a lot of turning of the sand bed, and it's keeping it really clean, and we're making a ton of progress. The snails, you can see there, a couple of them didn't make it, but they've done a great job just picking through that rock work, as well as the hermit crabs have done a great job just picking through that rock work and cleaning it up. The sand bed is ton better than what it was. It has been really picked clean as well and turned over and is in really good shape. Really, at this point, at the 5-day mark, the biggest thing I'm still continuing to work on is that cyano. So looking forward at the 9-day mark. So this is 9 days after adjusting my filter and adding the cleanup crew. At the 9-day mark, we're essentially 100%. You can see a little touch there in the back on the sand bed. Really not much at all. You can see a touch, a little bit of a red there on the rock work, lower side. But pretty much the rock has been picked clean and the sand bed has been picked clean and turned over. So again, I will do a second part to show the filtration adjustments, but at day 9 here, the cleanup crew has essentially picked clean the entire tank. And of course, you know, those clowns are much happier swimming in a tank that is nice and clean. All right, so please check out part 2. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I will get part 2 out soon. Thanks, guys.